After rejecting her advances, my obsessed colleague fabricated proof of an affair and sent it to my wife. The real shock came when my wife celebrated, immediately activating our prenup's adultery clause and confessing, "I don't care if it's real. I get to keep everything." I'm 34 years old and have been working as an internal auditor for a medium-sized tech company in Austin for 6 years. It's nothing glamorous, but the salary is stable, the benefits are decent, and frankly, it allowed me to maintain our lifestyle because I was the sole income earner at home. Eleanor, 32, and I had been married for 8 years. We were high school sweethearts, that whole typical romantic history that sounds good on an anniversary card. In the beginning, she tried to stay active in the workforce. She moved through retail, administrative positions, and office reception desks, but none lasted more than 6 months. There was always a new culprit, a nasty boss, conflictual coworkers, unbearable hours, toxic environments, until one day she simply stopped trying. She said she would seek financial independence from home. This turned into an endless rotation of failed businesses. First, essential oils, then artisanal jewelry to sell online, accumulating boxes full of inventory in the garage without making a single sale. After that, her brief stint as an influencer with barely 73 followers, posting photos of the house and talking about lifestyle optimization. Her last venture was dropshipping. She invested $3,000 of my money in a course that promised 6-figure incomes. 8 months later, the great business had accumulated $247 in sales and over $5,000 in expenses for ads, inventory, and fees. But Eleanor insisted she just needed a little more time to become a successful entrepreneur. Meanwhile, I supported everything: the mortgage, the cars, the household expenses, and the care of the only truly balanced being in the house, our golden retriever, Rocky. As the years went by, the gap between us widened. She continued to spend compulsively, especially on clothes and products she needed for her projects. If I mentioned the financial situation, she reacted as if I were attacking her. She accused me of sabotaging her dreams or not wanting her to be happy. Fortunately, when we got married, my parents convinced me to sign a prenuptial agreement. I had just received an inheritance from my grandparents. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough for my family to insist on protecting my assets. Eleanor reluctantly agreed. The document stipulated that assets owned prior to the marriage were exclusively mine and that anything acquired during the union would be divided, but it contained a key clause. If either party committed adultery, they would forfeit their right to the marital assets. My mother insisted on including it. Eleanor had treated it as a joke at the time. All of this would have remained in the past if Tiffany hadn't shown up. She arrived at the company 4 months ago as a new project manager. She was my age, technically efficient, but she had a manner that set off all the alarm bells. From day one, she was overly effusive. She managed to pass by my desk constantly, laughed exaggeratedly at comments that weren't even funny, and asked personal questions that had little to do with work. In the first week, she asked about my university. In the second, about my family, hobbies, and hometown. By the third, she wanted to know how I worked out, what music I listened to, and what my favorite restaurants were. All of that was already uncomfortable, but the situation worsened one night when I stayed late, working past 7 p.m. Tiffany was still there. She approached with 2 sodas she'd taken from the break room fridge. She handed me one, saying I surely needed it after a long day. I thanked her out of courtesy, but remained focused on my reports. She pulled up a chair and stayed, watching me in silence for several minutes, as if studying my working style was part of her duties. Suddenly, she blurted out, "The way you concentrate is very attractive." I laughed to downplay it and refocused on the screen. She remained nearby for a while longer before leaving. From that moment on, her behavior became increasingly invasive. In client meetings, she began calling herself my work wife, not as a joke, but with a certainty that left everyone confused. "Let me consult with my work husband," she'd say, pointing at me while I tried to maintain my composure. Every morning she showed up with a hot drink, which I never accepted because I don't even drink coffee. In response, she started bringing me pastries from a bakery near her apartment. She also sought excuses to touch me: a hand on the shoulder, unnecessary brushes while walking. On one occasion, she dropped a pen during a meeting. When picking it up, she rested her hand on my thigh for a few seconds that felt eternal. I instantly pushed my chair back. She smiled as if she had accomplished something. Then the messages started, first work-related, then after-hours conversations, questions at midnight, weekend invitations for coffee or walks. One night, she sent a photo of herself from a bar with the caption, "Wish you were here." I always responded as neutrally as possible. "I'm busy. I can't. I already have plans. Have a good time." I never intended to be rude. I was just trying to maintain basic professional boundaries. But Tiffany seemed to live in a world where boundaries didn't exist. I mentioned it to Eleanor once, maybe a couple of months after this new project manager joined the team. I tried to tell the story in a light tone, as if it were just an awkward anecdote. "There's a colleague who started this strange work-wife game. It makes me a little uncomfortable." Eleanor barely looked up from her phone, where she was checking dropshipping Facebook groups. "Sounds like she likes you. Ignore her." And she carried on, as if what I had said wasn't relevant. I obeyed, which I now know was my first mistake. 2 months later, I started collecting evidence. I didn't do it out of paranoia, but out of simple self-protection. When something starts feeling out of place, you take note. Plus, I had heard enough stories about false accusations in the tech sector to know that if you don't have evidence, you're left defenseless. Many companies react immediately, firing first and asking questions never, especially when there's even a rumor of inappropriate conduct. I wasn't building a case against Tiffany. I was trying to protect my job. If she ever decided to twist reality and accuse me of harassment, I needed to prove that I was the one setting boundaries from the beginning. It was that simple. I saved screenshots of all our exchanges and filed them in a folder on my personal laptop. I even started recording voice notes on my phone. After any strange interaction, I would sit in my car and describe what happened. What was said, in what tone, who was nearby. Sometimes it felt like overkill, but what's more excessive? Documenting uncomfortable incidents or losing your job to a false accusation without a way to prove your version. By the 3rd month, I had a fairly complete file. Screenshots, dated notes, audio recordings, everything organized chronologically. I also kept a separate document where I tracked how her behavior gradually escalated. She had begun asking questions that were too personal. "How long have you been married? Do you still go out together? Are you happy?" I always answered vaguely or redirected the conversation to work, but she persisted relentlessly. Approximately 3.5 months after her arrival, something happened that marked a turning point. I stayed late to finish an audit report. It was past 10 p.m. The building had been empty for hours. I was concentrating, trying to finish everything before the weekend, when Tiffany appeared. "Burning the midnight oil," she said, sitting on the edge of my desk. Not in a chair, but on my desk, with one leg dangling. "I just want to finish this before Monday," I replied without looking up from the monitor. "You work too hard. Eleanor doesn't value what you do." That managed to pull me out of my concentration flow. I looked up. "Sorry, I'm just saying," she continued, leaning toward me. "You're here giving everything, while she's probably at home watching TV or checking her phone. Does she even know you're here this late?" "That's none of your business," I replied, forcing myself to remain calm. "I would appreciate you," she whispered. "If you were mine, I'd never take you for granted." I stood up, grabbed my laptop, and decided to end it immediately. "Tiffany, I need you to understand this. Whatever you think is going on, it ends now. I'm married. I'm not interested in anything with you. I've been cordial, but you're crossing boundaries. From this moment on, we are strictly professional. Nothing more." Her expression shifted in seconds from hopeful to surprised to something darker. She slid off the desk with tense movements, and as she straightened her skirt, her voice turned icy. "You think you're too good for me? You think your boring little wife, who does nothing but stay home, is better than someone who actually understands you?" "I need you to leave," I said firmly. She stood there, staring at me without blinking for a few seconds, grabbed her purse and walked out. I heard the sound of her heels receding down the hallway and then the ding of the elevator. I arrived home close to 11 p.m. Eleanor was asleep on the sofa, her glass of iced tea on the table, and her laptop still open to a dropshipping forum. I went straight to the bedroom, updated my incident file, and went to bed, thinking perhaps it was all over. I didn't know that same night Tiffany had made the most reasonable decision a well-adjusted person could make after being rejected: destroy my life. The next afternoon, I returned from work around 6 p.m. The day had been normal. I finished my tasks. I didn't see her at all. I assumed she was avoiding interaction after our conversation. Perfect. That was exactly what I wanted. When I entered the kitchen, Eleanor was there. She didn't greet me. She didn't look up. She was just staring intently at her phone, motionless. "Hi," I said as I put down my bag. "Everything okay?" She looked up, and I immediately knew something was terribly wrong. "We need to talk," she said, placing her phone on the counter. Bad sign. I sat down at the table. She remained standing, arms crossed, evaluating me as if deciding whether to approve or reject an application. "I know about Tiffany." The punch to my gut was instantaneous, not because I had done anything, but because I understood that what was coming would be serious. "What exactly do you think you know?" I asked carefully. "I know you slept with her." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't react with anger. I simply looked at her and replied slowly, "That's a lie." "Who told you that?" She picked up her phone and showed it to me. "Tiffany wrote to me last night. She said she couldn't live with the guilt and that I deserved to know the truth. Exactly last night, right after I rejected her. Eleanor, I have never touched Tiffany. I barely talked to her. She sent me screenshots," she interrupted. "Conversations between you, detailed messages about how unhappy you are with me, about hotel encounters, about everything." "Those screenshots are fake," I said. "Tiffany has been harassing me at work for 4 months. For months, I had kept a meticulous record of everything that occurred between Tiffany and me. Not because I was paranoid, but because from the moment she started crossing obvious boundaries, I knew something serious could happen eventually. I took small notes, saved emails, logged times and comments, even situations that seemed insignificant. It was all part of a routine I had implemented by professional instinct. I never imagined it would end up being my lifeline. Yet, there I was, watching as a lie fabricated in a matter of hours threatened to unravel 8 years of marriage. The most disturbing thing was not the accusation itself, but Eleanor's expression, completely impassive, almost disinterested, as if witnessing a play whose ending she already knew. There was no surprise, shock, or pain in her eyes, just a kind of calculated calm that gave me a bad feeling from the start. "Show me your phone," she said in a tone so cold it could have been a work instruction. I handed it to her without the slightest resistance. She meticulously checked everything: messages, emails, call logs, even apps I had never interacted with. When she finished, her face was identical. "Of course, I didn't find anything." "You deleted it," she stated with an unearned certainty. "I didn't delete anything because there is nothing to delete," I repeated, trying not to sound defensive. "Let me see what Tiffany sent you." Eleanor raised her phone, opened the conversation, and placed it in front of me. Tiffany's message was almost an essay, endless paragraphs expressing guilt. It described a supposed 2-month romance and claimed I had confessed wanting to leave Eleanor. Then came the screenshots, entire conversations that never existed, meticulously crafted with unnerving precision, from my contact photo to perfectly fabricated timestamps. I observed it all patiently. "This is fabricated," I said with absolute certainty. "None of these conversations happened. Tiffany put them together." "They're quite believable," Eleanor replied, pulling the phone away as if she had already made an irrevocable decision. "Because she edited them to be. But they are false, and I can prove it. I have 4 months of documentation detailing her harassment." She didn't even blink. "I don't care," she said. It was the first time in the entire conversation that I had to keep silent. That phrase wasn't pain, it wasn't disappointment, it was strategy. The way she said it, paused and deliberate, set off every alarm. "What do you mean you don't care?" I asked. She leaned back against the counter, crossing her arms with a brutal comfort. For a second, I saw something in her face I had never seen in 8 years. Satisfaction. She had been waiting for this moment. "I'm not interested in whether it's real or not," she replied, like someone delivering a verdict. "What matters is that I have evidence. Screenshots, texts, timings, everything necessary." She pronounced the word evidence as if savoring the power it granted her. "I read our prenup today," she continued calmly. "And there's an adultery clause. If I prove you cheated, I keep everything we built during the marriage. You forfeit your right to the marital assets." I didn't have to say anything. The blow was direct. In that instant, I realized I wasn't watching her lose control. I was watching her reveal her true self. She wasn't heartbroken. She wasn't hurt. She had spent the entire day formulating a plan. "You see an opportunity," I said in a low voice, feeling everything click into place. "Tiffany sends you fake screenshots, and instead of asking me about it, you race to calculate how to gain an advantage." Eleanor smiled. She smiled like someone who finally gets all the puzzle pieces to fit. "Finally," she said, letting out a genuine sigh. "You have no idea how exhausting it was to pretend all these years. Being cooped up in this house, bored, watching you work late, having to listen to you talk about savings and long-term plans while I tried to get my projects off the ground." Every word was a dart, not for what she said, but because it revealed that she had been maintaining an image that never existed all that time. "I've been thinking about how to get out," she continued. "I thought one of my businesses would work so I could leave you on my own. But this woman handed me everything. I don't care if anything really happened between you two. I have the screenshots, that's enough." I took a deep breath. "So, what you intend to do is activate the clause using false evidence created by someone who is harassing me," I said, with the same coldness as her. "Not with everything," she corrected me, slightly raising her chin. "Only with everything we accumulated in these 8 years, the house share, the joint savings, your retirement contributions. You know, the agreement is very clear." It was impressive to hear her talk like this, as if reciting a financial strategy she had been training for months. "And you think a judge is going to fall for this?" "I think a judge will see detailed, coherent messages from your coworker, and you won't be able to prove it didn't happen. How do you prove a negative? Besides, I already spoke with a lawyer. He says I have a solid case." I wasn't surprised. While I was working, Eleanor had been planning how to take everything from the very first minute. It was no longer an emotional reaction. It was a calculated operation. "You're incredible," I said. Not out of admiration, but because her level of coldness was unimaginable. "I'm intelligent," she corrected. "You made good money. I enjoyed it. And now it's time for me to take my half and move on with my life. You can fend for yourself." She took a few steps toward the living room. Then she turned slightly. "A piece of advice. Don't fight this. If you accept it, it will be quick. If not, I'll make this as horrible as I can. I'll involve Tiffany. I'll talk to your company. I'll make everyone believe this story. I will destroy you, or you sign. You decide." She turned on the television like someone finishing a profitable negotiation and settling down for a well-deserved rest. I remained seated for several minutes. It wasn't shock or anger. It was absolute clarity. Rocky, faithful as always, rested his head on my leg. My thoughts were more organized than ever. I had months of solid evidence, and moreover I sensed that everything Tiffany and Eleanor had done would leave an inevitable digital trail. People who act impulsively believe they are much cleverer than they are. I stood up without saying a word. I went to the bedroom, opened my laptop, and started working. Being an internal auditor has its uses. I understand the logic behind systems better than anyone. A year earlier, Eleanor had asked me to set up her new iPhone. I had transferred photos, apps, contacts, and also configured our family iCloud account. It remained that way for sharing photos, purchases, and locations. She never altered those settings. That meant her backup was still synced to the same account. From my laptop, I could see everything. It sounds invasive, perhaps, but trying to ruin your spouse's life using fabricated evidence without even checking if it's real is more invasive. When Eleanor fell asleep, I opened her synchronized messages. I calmly scrolled through everything with professional detachment, and there was the truth. Tiffany had sent the message at 11:47 p.m., exactly 1 hour and 47 minutes after I shut her down at the office. Every word of the message was false, but constructed with precise intentions, to destroy my marriage in a matter of minutes. It described how supposedly everything had started innocently, how we tried to resist, and how I had confessed being unhappy. Then came the fabricated screenshots. All false, all premeditated. And the most devastating thing was not what Tiffany had created, but how quickly Eleanor decided to profit from it. The messages I found were not just false. They were a complete work of manipulation. Entire conversations were fabricated with responses, reactions, and even perfectly imitated read receipts. Tiffany must have spent hours creating that digital montage. Each screenshot had my contact photo, credible times, and a dialogue flow that, at first glance, seemed authentic. The first indication of what was happening appeared at 7:23 a.m. when Eleanor, still half asleep, must have checked her phone. Her reaction was recorded exactly like this. "This is real. Are you telling me my husband is cheating on me?" And on the other side, Tiffany feigned passion. "Eleanor, I'm sorry. I know it hurts, but I couldn't keep hiding it. You deserve the truth." Then, silence. Eleanor only responded that she needed to think, and for 3 hours she wrote nothing. But that silence didn't signify doubt or pain. She was calculating. I found this out when I reached the conversations with her best friend, Scarlett. At 10:47 a.m., Eleanor contacted her, agitated. "Eleanor, Scarlett, you won't believe what happened. A woman from my husband's work wrote to me saying they've been sleeping together for months. She sent me screenshots. Scarlett, OMG, are you okay?" Eleanor's response revealed who she truly was. "I don't know if I care. I just checked the prenup. There's an adultery clause. If I prove he was unfaithful, I get to keep everything. The house share, the savings, his retirement fund, everything." Scarlett, incredulous, asked, "You're not even sad?" And Eleanor, without hesitation, confessed what she had been holding back for years. "Sad? No. Fed up? Yes. I've been stuck in this marriage that gives me nothing for years. He just works, and I have to be at home trying to start businesses without capital. This could be the best thing that's ever happened to me," Scarlett insisted. "But do you care whether it's true or not?" Eleanor, "Not at all. I have her coworker's screenshots. That's enough. I'm calling the lawyer my cousin recommended." There it was. Eleanor wasn't looking for the truth. She saw an opportunity for profit and decided to exploit it. And she wrote it down, leaving no room for doubt. I continued reviewing and found more messages. She had spent the entire day preparing her strategy: how to confront me without revealing she had already consulted an attorney, how to use the screenshots to activate the infidelity clause of the prenup, and how to make it difficult for me to prove the accusations were false. Scarlett, still retaining a little common sense, asked, "What if he proves nothing happened? If he has evidence?" Eleanor's response was almost triumphant. "How? Even if nothing happened, he can't prove it. And that's the best part. I have detailed screenshots. He would only have, 'I didn't do it.' What judge will believe him without strong evidence? And that colleague of his seems so obsessed that she'd probably testify in my favor." I kept reading, and every line was more revealing. Eleanor was calculating what she stood to gain: more than $200,000 between the house, savings, and my retirement fund. She was already looking at apartments, talking about her new life without this useless man. There was no pain, no betrayal, just ambition. Then I found the conversations between Eleanor and Tiffany after my confrontation with them. Eleanor, "He knows now. I told him tonight." Tiffany, "And what did he say?" Eleanor, "He denied everything, obviously. He said you invented it all and that he has a record of you harassing him." Tiffany, "That's what they always do. Men always deny." Eleanor, "Anyway, it doesn't matter. I have your screenshots. My lawyer says I practically have the case won." Tiffany, "I'm glad I could help you see what he's really like. You deserve better." Eleanor, "Thanks for telling me. I know it was hard. They weren't talking like victims of infidelity. They were talking like partners executing a plan." Perhaps Tiffany was acting out of her obsession, genuinely believing she needed to free Eleanor. But Eleanor knew exactly what she was doing, using another woman's fantasy to commit fraud. Two different realities, both twisted, and I was in the middle. I took screenshots of everything. Eleanor's messages with Scarlett planning the financial raid, the conversations with Tiffany consolidating the lie, the timeline proving Eleanor talked to a lawyer before even accusing me. All the proof I needed to destroy their plan. I saved every record meticulously. They would not see what I was preparing coming. That night, I set my alarm for 5 a.m. I wasn't going to ask for help. I was going to expose everything. I woke up on time. Eleanor was still asleep when I left at 6:30 a.m. I arrived at the office at 7 a.m. when there was barely any activity. I went straight to my desk and opened the complete Tiffany file. 4 months of documentation. All her calls, screenshots, voice recordings, dated and timed notes. I added what happened the night before. I organized everything chronologically and created a detailed index. Then I printed 2 complete copies, one for human resources and one for my lawyer. It took over 30 minutes of continuous printing, but I needed physical papers, not just digital files. At 7:45 a.m., I went up to the executive floor. The senior director of human resources usually arrived around 7:30 a.m. Her office light was already on, and that was the start of something very different from what Eleanor and Tiffany had imagined. I knocked on the door with a firm rap, the kind I use when I need to be taken seriously. It wasn't aggressive, but it was forceful enough to communicate that something important was about to happen. "Come in," the HR manager replied from inside. When I entered, she looked up from her computer with an expression of surprise. It was clear she wasn't expecting anyone at that hour. I had arrived so early that the hallway lights were still on night mode. I even thought I heard the hum of the air conditioning, as if welcoming me to a morning that already promised to be heavy. "Hello? Is everything okay?" she asked, tilting her head as if trying to decipher whether I was coming with a routine query or a problem that could ruin her day. "No," I replied calmly, minding every word. "There is a serious workplace situation that needs immediate attention. Do you have time right now?" The phrase "serious workplace situation" acted exactly as I expected. In human resources, that combination of words is a red button. Maximum alert. She closed her laptop without even saving what she was doing and indicated the chair opposite her. "Of course. Please sit down. Tell me what's going on." I sat down with the folder held firmly in my hands. I avoided any impulsive gestures. I needed her to see that I came prepared. I placed the folder on her desk as if it were an official file and began to speak with the precision of an auditor, because that's exactly what I was and what I had prepared: a professional, detailed, verifiable report. "I have been dealing with workplace harassment from a project manager named Tiffany for the past 4 months. It is not a perception. It is not a misinterpretation. I have everything documented. The harassment escalated 2 nights ago when she made inappropriate advances during a late-night work session. I rejected her clearly and directly and asked her to maintain professional boundaries." I paused to open the folder. The documents were organized by dates, incidents, and evidence. After I rejected her, in less than 2 hours, she fabricated false screenshots claiming we were in a relationship. She sent them to my wife. And now Eleanor, based on those falsifications, is initiating divorce proceedings. I explained, without raising my voice but with firmness, that I had irrefutable proof that everything had been manipulated: the image's metadata, the timings, the inconsistencies, the manipulated messages, and the absolute absence of those supposed chats in my real records. Her expression quickly shifted from confusion to genuine concern. Her eyebrows furrowed, and her back straightened, like someone who understands that what is before them is not a simple complaint, but a potential corporate disaster. "This is a lot. Can you walk me through this from the beginning? I want to fully understand every step." So I did. I opened the folder and began to go through the timeline with surgical accuracy. The first incident 4 months ago, the invasive conversations, the attempts to cross professional boundaries disguised as workplace closeness, the inappropriate comments. The night of the explicit advance, my categorical rejection, the immediate retaliation, the fabricated screenshots sent to Eleanor. She took notes incessantly, as if needing to record every millimeter of the disaster to build a solid case. "You're saying she created false evidence right after you rejected her?" she finally asked. "Exactly. Screenshots manipulated with Photoshop. There is no improper relationship, and I can prove it. But even so, she sent them with the intent to damage my personal and professional life." I leaned back in the chair before adding, "This is no longer just harassment. It's a personal attack being executed from within the company." She closed her notebook with a crisp motion. "I need to escalate this. We will have to involve our legal counsel and the HR director. This completely exceeds what I can handle alone." "Can you be available today?" I assumed this was going to take all day. "I'll be wherever you need me." "Good. I'll call you as soon as we are ready. In the meantime, maintain all possible distance from Tiffany. Do not respond if she tries to contact you." "That is my plan." I returned to my desk with the strange feeling that I was living a double life. On the one hand, a standard employee completing his workday. On the other, someone whose marriage was burning down thanks to a fabrication created in less than 2 hours. I dedicated myself to work because if my profession taught me anything, it's that the world keeps moving, even when your personal life is collapsing. At 2:30 p.m., I received a phone call. "Conference room now, please." There were the HR director, the corporate lawyer, and the vice president of operations. I presented everything again, this time expanded, with the certainty of someone who knows that every piece fits together flawlessly. I showed the files, the dates, the original messages, the technical discrepancies of the fake screenshots. The HR director spoke when I finished. "We have reviewed your documentation. We must open a formal investigation. Tiffany will be immediately suspended while we conclude the process. This may take a few days." The lawyer intervened. "Our investigation is limited to workplace matters. We will not offer opinions on your divorce proceedings." In other words, this is not our problem. Perfect. I never expected it to be. The investigation concluded on Thursday. Same room, but with an even heavier atmosphere. "Tiffany's contract has been terminated," the director announced. "We have an official letter stating that no evidence of an improper relationship between you and the employee was found." I read the letter carefully. It was pure bureaucracy, but it said exactly what I needed. The company determined that the supposed relationship never existed. Period. I left the building straight for a law firm known for its brutal efficiency. I handed over 2 folders, everything related to Tiffany and Eleanor's messages with Scarlett, where they openly discussed the attempt to benefit from the prenup, regardless of whether the allegations were true or not. The lawyer reviewed everything, underlining parts, organizing evidence, asking specific questions. "Your wife wants to activate a clause in the prenup based on falsified evidence. Furthermore, she admits she doesn't care if it's true. That is fraud. How fast do you want to go?" "Maximum speed. We will file the lawsuit on Tuesday. Divorce, counterclaim for emotional distress, annulment based on bad faith, and a request for her to pay your legal fees." "Perfect. Go ahead." On Tuesday, everything was formally filed. Eleanor was notified on Thursday. She tried to call me 19 times. I ignored everyone. Then she sent a message. "Talk to my lawyer." That same day, she tried to call me 12 more times. After that, absolute silence. Her lawyer surely intervened. The settlement took 6 weeks. Her defense collapsed upon seeing the material we had, especially the messages with Scarlett, where it was clear they were looking to gain an advantage regardless of the truth. They tried to allege invasion of privacy for the access to the family iCloud. My lawyer replied, "She never changed the settings in a full year, and they are still legally married." The judge completely agreed. The result was simple. I kept everything that was mine before the marriage. The judge applied a division based on fault. Bad faith ruins any claim to equity. I kept the house, both cars, Rocky, the savings account, my entire 401k. She received her own 401k, $1,000 in cash, her personal belongings, $23,000 in credit card debt, now exclusively hers, and her online sales inventory, boxes, materials, essential oils, all for her. The judge explicitly noted that attempting to manipulate a prenup with fabricated evidence was bad faith and justified a drastically unequal distribution. Meanwhile, Tiffany's fall was slow but devastating. The tech world in Austin is small, and a harassment accusation is enough to sink any reputation. It was rumored she applied to over 15 companies. None hired her. 8 months later, she left Texas, returned to Ohio, deleted all her social media, and ended up working in retail. I didn't ask for details. I wasn't interested. 2 months after the agreement, Eleanor texted me asking when she could pick up the rest of her things. I gave her a single option. Saturday, 2 p.m. She had 30 minutes or everything would be donated. That Saturday, I was on the sofa watching college football with Rocky asleep next to me. At 1:58 p.m., the doorbell rang. I opened the door. There she was, disheveled, no makeup, hair messy, worn clothes, without the arrogant energy that characterized her. She seemed, for the first time, conscious of what she had lost, and I, for the first time, felt absolutely nothing. When I opened the door, the first thing I heard was a "hello," said in a dull tone. It wasn't the same Eleanor who had tried to confront me in the kitchen weeks ago. It was a defeated version, worn down by nearly a month and a half of being shredded in every hearing. "You have 30 minutes, I instructed, stepping aside to let her pass. "Your things are in the garage," Everything is boxed and labeled. Eleanor entered without looking at me once and walked straight to the garage, as if wanting to get it over with as soon as possible. She hadn't gone far when the doorbell rang again. When I opened it, I found Tiffany on my porch wearing a summer dress, hair styled as if she'd come from a photo shoot, and holding a lasagna dish. "Hello," she greeted with a completely inappropriate smile. "I heard the divorce is finalized. I thought maybe we could talk." "I made lasagna." I stared at her, wondering if it was a joke or an episode of delusion. "This has to be a joke," I muttered. But Tiffany continued as if I hadn't said anything. "I know things were complicated, but now that you're single, maybe we could start over. I never stopped caring about you." I didn't get a chance to answer when Eleanor's voice appeared behind me. "Are you seriously doing this?" Tiffany's smile immediately vanished. Eleanor stood beside me, looking at her as if she had found something unpleasant on the sidewalk. "What are you supposed to be doing here?" Eleanor demanded. "I came to talk to him," Tiffany countered, straightening up. "And I don't see how this concerns you. You're divorced now, thanks to your fake screenshots, you psychotic witch," Eleanor snapped. "They weren't fake," Tiffany shot back. "There was something real between us. He just never wanted to accept it." I raised a hand to stop them. "Let's make this clear right now. There was never anything between you and me. You harassed me for 4 months. I rejected you. You tried to ruin my life. You were fired, and now you show up at my house with lasagna and declarations of love, thinking we're going to date. Do you really think that's normal?" Tiffany's face crumbled for a second, though she tried to hold firm. "I did it because I love you," she insisted desperately. "I just wanted to get you out of a relationship that was hurting you." Eleanor let out a dry laugh. "You love him? You don't even know him. You know what you are? A disturbed lunatic who cost me $200,000? "I cost you?" Tiffany shrieked. "You were trying to steal from him using my inventions. You didn't care if it was true. You just wanted his money. And you wanted him so badly you were willing to destroy his life," Eleanor retorted. "At least I admit to being self-interested. You're not even that. You're delusional." By then, they were face to face on the porch, and Tiffany was still holding the lasagna dish as if it were part of a battle uniform. "I would have treated him well," Tiffany said. "I would have valued him, not like you, who only spent his money on businesses that never worked." "You would have driven him crazy in less than a month," Eleanor countered. "You're a stalker. He rejected you. The court rejected you. You lost everything because of your invented screenshots." In that instant, Tiffany threw the dish with all her might. The casserole hit Eleanor squarely in the chest, and the lasagna flew everywhere, red sauce and cheese sliding down her sweatshirt. Eleanor screamed and lunged at her. It was a full-on attack. Both ended up on the ground, surrounded by pasta and broken ceramic pieces. I simply stepped back, closed the screen door, and let them continue their spectacle. Then I took out my phone. 911, what is your emergency?" "Hello," I replied calmly. "I have 2 women fighting on my porch. One is my ex-wife, and the other is the former employee who caused the divorce. It would be good if you sent someone before they seriously hurt each other." Through the screen, I saw Eleanor put Tiffany in a headlock while Tiffany tried to claw her face. They were covered in lasagna, rolling back and forth as if it were an extreme sport. "Are you just going to stand there?" Eleanor shrieked while struggling. "Yes," I replied. "The police are on their way." "I was going to make you happy," Tiffany choked out, trying to pull Eleanor's hair even as she was half choked. "We could have had something beautiful." "No, we couldn't," I replied from the door. "Besides, you are banned from my property. This is called trespassing." Eleanor managed to immobilize her for a few seconds. "You destroyed my life," she accused. "Your life was already destroyed before I showed up," Tiffany countered, struggling to throw her off. They were still battling when the patrol car arrived 3 minutes later. The 2 officers got out, looking exhausted. "Sir, are these women harassing you?" the first one asked. "She," I pointed to Eleanor, who was now sitting on top of Tiffany, "is my ex-wife. She just came for her things. And she," I pointed to Tiffany, "is a former employee who showed up uninvited with lasagna and love declarations. They started fighting right here." The officers separated them with evident patience. Both were covered in sauce, cheese, and grass stains. The second agent started taking notes. "He's my husband," Eleanor was saying. "Ex-husband. Tiffany corrected her. Can we please? The first officer intervened, already at the end of his rope. You can leave the property without causing any more trouble. I'm not leaving without my things, Eleanor insisted. Ma'am, the officer replied, you started a fight on his porch. You can coordinate another day to pick up what's left. And her, Eleanor pointed at Tiffany. The officer turned back to her with an already tired gesture, as if this scene were the third of the day. Ma'am, do you have a valid reason to be on this property? Tiffany looked at me, still clinging to an illusion that had nowhere left to stand. I just thought we could talk, she said, on the verge of tears. I thought maybe there was a chance. There isn't, I replied firmly, without raising my voice. I'm asking you to leave. Don't come back. That was the final straw. Her shoulders slumped, and tears began to roll. The officer accompanied her to her car, speaking to her in a low voice to calm her as she tried to compose herself. On the other side of the porch, Eleanor was guided by the second agent toward her vehicle. She threw me one last look through the window. It was no longer rage or defiance, just an exhaustion that seemed to come from her soul. The two left shortly after. The officers took my statement with the precision of someone who doesn't want to extend their shift for another minute. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I shook my head. I didn't want to keep dragging that story out. I just needed to close the door, literally and metaphorically. When they finally left, the house fell silent. I closed the latch, let out a long sigh, and found Rocky sitting by the doorframe, watching me as if he had witnessed a complete documentary on human nature. You really understand life, buddy, I told him, leaning down to scratch his head. He wagged his tail with the serenity of someone who doesn't need drama to exist. He was, without a doubt, the only sane being in that entire mess. I went to the kitchen, opened a cold drink, and returned to the sofa. I turned the game back on, let the noise of the stadium fill the room, and as I settled in, I thought about the irony of the moment. After everything that had happened, the only victory that truly mattered was getting my peace back. And that night, finally, I got it back.